the Rangers Journal Line.
Hello and welcome to the Rangers Journal. My name is Kai Watson. I'll be your host for tonight's podcast. So for now, I'm delighted to be joined by Doug. So welcome, mate.
Thanks very much. Looking forward to it.
So we'll have Scotty jumping on at some point. I'm not quite sure when, but he will join us eventually. So get right into it. We've got a lot of transfer stuff to talk about, some national team stuff, mostly kind of transfer based, got a lot of interesting quotes and things to talk about on in and outs. But we'll start with the international stuff. So we obviously all know John Souttar's been dropped from the Scotland side. Doug and I were discussing it just before we came on. There doesn't seem to be anything about injuries. He obviously missed the end of the season, but they're normally quite quick. Like the SFA or the manager, normally quite quick to come out and say, "Oh, this is the reason." Especially since he's kind of played so much more than the other centre backs. So just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on it, Doug. Do you think, obviously there's no confirmation if it's injured or not, do you think he deserved to be dropped, like ahead of the other centre backs that are there? Do you think he should have been left in case he does get fit to be kind of one of the first choices? What are your thoughts on the John Souttar situation?
Well, I think, as he's shown this year, when he's fully fit and playing, I think John Souttar's an excellent centre back, certainly at the Scotland level, and he can absolutely be a starting centre back for Scotland. Like we were saying just before we came on, my assumption is that his injury from the tail end of the season has carried forward, and he's just not quite 100%. And so that's maybe the reason that he's not been taken. A lot of people, if you're looking online, and a lot of people are going with that tract in terms of their guesses as well. Although a lot of people, I think, are still tagging him as injury prone, despite, I think, this season, for me anyway, he kind of shook that off. He had a bit of a rough start with injuries, but this season I thought he was much better. From the selfish point of view, it's good for the club that he's not going, because he can now just rest and hopefully we get another good season out of him. And he gets full pre-season and everything. So, but yeah, injuries, it's got to be the best guess, I think.
I think a lot of it, like as Rangers fans, I think we're kind of burned by the whole Ryan Jack situation of players not being fit and then they're all of a sudden fit for international duty. It's obviously happened for this tournament, even though I'm sure there was murmurings that Jack was actually fit for the last bit of the season, but he just potentially wasn't selected. Again, rumours, nothing else that was confirmed, but I agree from a selfish point of view, it's probably best that he's not away, especially since he missed the end of the season. Like you say, he's been available most of the season this year. And he's been kind of an important part of the defence. Obviously, has his moments, which every defender kind of does, but I think he fits the style for Scotland really well. And they obviously kind of use Kieran Tierney as also that left-sided centre back as someone that can drive forward. So do you think, from that point of view, that he's going to be a miss for Scotland? Because I don't think there's really many right-sided kind of centre halves we have that can do that kind of role of coming into the midfield. Do you think that's something Scotland are going to miss in the tournament?
I think a big thing that he could have brought, because even if he went, I'm not sure Clark would have started him. So I think the thing that Scotland could really miss is having him as a player to come on if we're 1-0 up and there's 15 minutes to go or something like that, and we want to really make sure we don't slip at the end, because people have talked about it before. He's got a bit of that siege mentality, defensiveness about him, and I think he could have brought that. Scotland try to play quite flexible with the defence, obviously pushing up with the wingers where a lot of our strength lies, although we're missing all our best right wingers, but still, we've got a lot of strength in the sort of fullback department is what I meant to say. And also, like you say, with Tierney kind of pushing up and using that three to be a bit more mobile, to combat with the better play that we come up against most of the time, or a lot of the time. So he might not have started because he's maybe not quite as flexible in that regard. But yeah, I certainly think that they'll miss him as an option to bring on if we're holding on to a game, which I can definitely see that as being something that could happen if we manage to squeak a draw here or there somewhere and we're winning. It would be it's the most Scotland of things to just need to win and lose a last minute goal. So I think that could be a big miss for them.
Would 100% be completely off Scotland to kind of go and get a result in the first game against Germany and then fail in the games we should be taking points. But I think it's a good point you make
That's
of
it.
if we do need to kind of like tighten up a wee bit at the back, having that extra option off the bench and someone like Suter who, I mean, for his build, he's pretty athletic, especially coming on at the end of the game if you're playing against kind of tired strikers or if they've just brought on kind of forwards off the bench. If they've brought on fresh legs, it'd be a good option to have there. But unfortunately, he's not going. Like say, we've not had any confirmation that he's injured. It might just be that he's not fully recovered from what he had at the end of the season. But the only thing kind of guaranteed we know is that he's not going there. It gives him the full summer to kind of recover, get a full pre-season in, and again, as we both said, like from a selfish point of view, it's probably a good thing for Rangers anyway. So next point we'll move on to, we'll kind of talk a wee bit about Yanis Hadji and the quotes that came out during the week. Also a wee plug for the pod on Monday, so the guys covered kind of Yanis Hadji. They also covered the Cortez deal as well, but they looked more at the impact Hadji might have been able to have last season and impact he could have moving forward. So if you're interested in more kind of Yanis Hadji content, then there is the full podcast from Monday, so go and check that out. I'll just go through the quote that he said. So it's his words were, I told him before going to the national team what I wanted. I expect them to work as well as possible to find the right team and the right manager for me. I can't say if I'll be at Rangers or somewhere else. My future depends on my agents. He's obviously said within the quote that he can't say if he'll be at Rangers or not, but I don't feel like the first part of that really goes with staying at Rangers if he's looking for the right team, the right manager for him. It doesn't really suggest he'd have to come out and say that if it was going to be Rangers, if it was going to be under Philip Clement. So I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on those quotes, Doug, and obviously what Hadji's come out and said before he disappears away to the Euros with Romania.
Yeah, I think the quote really says it all. He's going to be looking to leave, which is understandable. I personally am quite upset by that. Anyone that's followed me on Twitter for any length of time will know I've been very vocal about the idea that I think that Hadji could still do a job for Rangers. I believe that since we came back to the Premiership alongside Tav and Kent, he's been the most creative player that we've had. But it just seems like at this stage, I've kind of resigned to the fact that he is going to be going. He's basically another Rangers player whose Rangers career has been ruined by injury. He was knocked out of stride by that injury, and he's obviously gone off on loan. The loan's not been a huge success, and that's really dampened enthusiasm for him coming back. There's also the other side that whether would he have fit into a Clement team. One of the big things that people level at him is his lack of pace, which it looks like it's going to be. Looking at all the other players that we're targeting, and looks like that's going to be a big thing in the new team. And he's more of a passer than a ball carrier, which I think is going to be a big aspect of the team next season as well. So, yeah, I think that's going to be it. The hope now for us is that he goes and have an absolutely barnstorming Euros, and we can drive his value up. There's value in his name alone, which has always been the other thing that's kind of lent him to be an asset that maybe we'd be more likely to sell, because if you sell him to the right place, people will pay money for him. So yeah, I think now the best thing from the Rangers' point of view is that he goes, has a crack in Euros, and that someone turns around and goes, oh yeah, we'll pay $5 million for him.
Really interesting. Like you say, the loan didn't kind of pan out the way Rangers had hoped. If you go and loan someone out to a La Liga club and they go and have a great season, then you're talking easy money there. But I thought it was really interesting that he was out of the team for so long. Obviously, no one was talking about him. Everybody was focusing on Lammers and kind of his loan spell. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he started a game against Real and apparently had a really good game. Like I looked at his stats after it, like the kind of ball retention, the recoveries, and the tackle numbers and stuff were really good. He played kind of deeper. Just thought it was interesting that completely out of the blue, he just started that Real game, obviously put in a decent performance. Unfortunately, he couldn't nail down a place at Alaves to drive his price up, which is obviously what Lammers has ended up doing, which we were probably hoping for Hadji. It'd obviously be interesting to see him in a Clement system, but like you say, Doug, every club we're linked to now is an absolute unit that's sheer athleticism, and it's obviously encouraging because we've not really had it, but I still think you could be doing with those players that can just drop into pockets of space instead of everybody driving forward. A player that's intelligent enough to kind of drop into an area and play those passes through the defence. Like there's not kind of enough players we have like that, and if you're getting rid of every player that can do that for someone that's obviously the players we're not going to bring in aren't just runners, they aren't just athletic, they're going to have kind of technical ability as well. But I do think there is space for players like that, even if it's coming on at the end of a game, starting in Europe, especially. Like it doesn't need to be you obviously need to move it that bit quicker when you're playing domestically because you don't get any time in the ball, so it needs to be moved that bit quicker. But in Europe, when you have a bit more space, I still think he could be an asset. But again, we wouldn't know if he'd fit any Clement's system, and going by the links we've had, it doesn't seem like there probably would be a place for him in terms of like a fee for him. Doug, what would you be happy with? I think we ended up paying was it like 3.5, 4 million for him at the time. I don't think we're going to get that back, even with the value in his name and the potential he has. I don't think we're going to make that money back. So, what would be, or what would you see as a fair deal to get back for Yanis Hadji in the current market?
I mean, I think if we could try and get at least half back. Again, going back to if he goes off and has a great Euros, then that'll push his value up. Teams are famously overpay for players that have good tournaments, so I think that's really what we're hoping for. But yeah, 1.5 million would probably be, I would have thought, where he would be at. And because again, his loan period wasn't that great. He played well when he played, but he just didn't play enough. But yeah, realistically, I don't think I can see much more than that unless he goes and has a good tournament. In which case, maybe we can push it up to 2 and a bit.
I think maybe looking at, like you say, that kind of 1.5, 2 million mark with a sell on, hopefully, in case he does kind of go wherever he goes in. Because we know how good a player he can be. Like we've seen it. Obviously, the injury could have slowed him down a wee bit, but it's not like he was ever blessed with pace anyway. Like that wasn't his game to go and bust by players. Like it's the kind of intelligence and the technical ability that you're paying for, and he showed that he has that. He just needs to kind of go somewhere and be consistent and get a consistent run of games, and hopefully his value can shoot up. But I do see him leaving in the summer, and hopefully we'll just stick a wee sell on in that he goes ups his game again, and we can still make a wee bit back. But next one I'll move on to is Abdallah Sima. So obviously reports come out in the middle of the week that Brighton are set to test the market for him, but they're going to wait until a new manager's in place, which kind of makes sense because if you bring in a manager, they might fancy keeping him. He's obviously going into the last year of his deal, so he'd have to negotiate a new contract. But I know there was rumours of Graham Potter coming back in. I don't know if Potter was in charge when they signed Sema, but obviously when they signed him, they loaned him out twice, so doesn't necessarily mean that Potter would want to give him a chance. But regarding Abdallah Sema and potentially coming to Rangers, what would your kind of price bracket be, Doug? What's the kind of highest you'd pay for him, or the most the value would go, and you'd be like, nah, it's not value for money at that point?
I think the most would maybe be around about the 5 million kind of range at an absolute push. I'm in my head, I'm kind of likening him to Kent in terms of what we paid for him at the time he came and how he'd done on his initial loan. Seema's more goals than assists, whereas Kent was a little bit the other way around. But I mean, I would like to see him back. Absolutely, I thought apart from his injury, I thought his loan was a complete success. He seemed to take really well to the club as well. He got 16 goals last season, third top scorer in all competitions. So, in terms of that sort of people mostly class him as an attacker, I still consider wingers to be midfielders, but so from that kind of midfield attacking area, it's one of the best returns we've had in a long time. And I think he can get better as well. So I would like to see him there. If we can push the number down a bit, I think that would be good. Again, maybe with Brighton, we offer a sell-on clause. Again, if he can come here, do well for another 2 years and we turn him round. My one concern is because they're going to be waiting and waiting for their new manager, so that puts an unsure timescale on it. And also looking at some of the fees that we're potentially paying out for some of the other players. And we'll be going on to talk about is it Ramani? Is that how you pronounce it? The fee for him is reasonably high. So given how many players we're looking at bringing in, how many of these sort of bigger sales can we make that will presumably come with bigger wages as well? So that maybe concerns me that it's a deal that I'd maybe have liked to try to have gotten done earlier so that we knew where we were with it. Whereas now we're kind of in no man's land. So how long do we wait for him before we have to go, right, we're just going to have to look at other options?
I think obviously all depends on how long Brighton can take to appoint their manager and where they go from there, because I'm sure a lot of Rangers fans would have wanted him back in considering the season he had last season. So it's just obviously Brighton dependent. The player seems happy here. He seems like he'd be happy enough coming back, but we can't underestimate the kind of season he had and the fact that other teams will be interested. I think he's just 22 still. He's obviously been at Brighton for a few years and he's not managed to get his appearances here, but there'll be clubs presumably all over Europe that have noticed his performances domestically and kind of what he's done in Europe for us. But just before we move on from Sima, he's obviously had the injury that he had before the African Cup of Nations, didn't even actually get to the tournament before getting injured. And then he came back, and again, I can't remember if it was the same injury, but he was out again for another few games. Or the injury is something that, for a player that relies on kind of their athleticism so much, or the injury is something that worry you? Would that make you want to pay less, or would it make you shy away from the deal at any point?
It hasn't. It wouldn't make me shy away from the deal. I don't think. He's still young enough that I would like to think that won't become a problem. But I mean, it's impossible to say. Like you say, the concern is that there were two injuries. I've just brought it up here. So what was it? January to March, and then recurring again in April. So both hamstring injuries, and both for reasonable amounts of time. So that that's a concern. The fact that they're both there, but the fact that they're quite close together may just mean that we've maybe rushed them back a little bit, given the end of the season and how things are going. So there is that possibility. But I don't think he's got a particularly terrible injury history overall. So it would I don't think it would put me off. It might be something they could mention, but like you say, with the potential for so many other teams to be interested in him as well, I doubt it will be much of a bargaining chip.
So I think I'm also sure the season he spent in loan to Stoke, I'm not sure what the injury was, but he pretty much missed the full season. So he has missed, like, over the last few years, at least a season and a half of football, which I think for someone of that is a bit of a concern. Obviously, the injury at Stoke doesn't seem to have affected his athleticism, and I can't remember off the top of my head what that injury actually was. But I think that's the kind of biggest concern with the fee for me. Like, it's nothing to do with his ability. I still think technically he can get better, but it's the sheer kind of power and pace that he has that makes him so dangerous. You can see how much better Rangers look with him back in the side, especially when he came on the 3-3 game at Ibrox, obviously against Celtic. It was a completely different kind of Rangers side when he was playing on the right in that second half. So if he were to come back, what's your ideal position for Abdallah Sima? Because I know he got a lot of his goals kind of from the left, but I think he's also pretty dangerous option through the middle. So if he were to come back, where would you want his position to be?
Well, just touching there on the injuries at Stoke, you mentioned current transfer market, it was 3 separate ones: an ankle injury, a back injury, and a groin injury. That, like you say, had him out for quite a large period of time there. So again, hopefully not connected. Maybe just the knocks of a young lad still growing. Ideally, he's quite tall, so maybe he just was going through his growth spurt and everything was a bit fragile. Position wise, I mean, I would probably look to keep him where we had him. I think I'd want someone maybe slightly more creative in the centre roles that can move things about a bit more. I really liked how he came in quite aggressively, and as he scored a lot of goals from that position, which isn't something I want to continue, and indeed I want from all our other sort of midfield type positions. So I'd probably look to keep him in that similar position, but. You've like you say, if he can play other positions, that gives you different options. The fact that he's got that athleticism, the height as well, you can play him slightly differently depending on what we need from other games. We'll obviously go on to talk about the attributes of some of the guys that we're signing, and I think that there's a lot of things that are kind of complementary there. And not so much maybe about where he starts, but something that I've always said I want to see more from Rangers teams are players being more fluid positionally and moving around, because that was something again during the 55 and in Europe we got a lot more of that in terms of I feel players moving into positions away from their starting spots. Tavernier was an expert at that when he was in his pomp, just flying, coming in and appearing at the back post. And I want to see more of that from an attacking point of view, because I think when you're coming against the low blocks that we'll get, back at home, that's what's going to get us the space to thread balls through. Moving the ball about, having players also moving about, rotating positions, because that's going to pull the opposition players out of the way, confuse them, and get us the space. So I'd like to see probably starting in a similar place, but with flexibility.
The fluidity is obviously something that's important and something that's really nice to see, just as long as Clement doesn't start coming out and using that term hybrid player, which obviously Michael Beale was a massive fan of last summer. But just going to say welcome to Scotty. All right, mate?
Aye, all right, lad. Just literally got a shower, finished my run here. I'm shattered, man. I was about to have a wee slippy tongue here. How's yours, all right?
I'm all good, mate. So we've already covered a few topics. We'll just get a wee quick fire from you just for your thoughts on it. So just start off with John Souttar first. Obviously dropped from the Scotland side. No confirmation it's been injury, but he was injured at the end of the season. How are you feeling about that?
Listen, it's one of them things that I'm probably quite happy with, considering I think Souttar's going to be staying. He's going to be potentially one of my main centre backs next season, depending on what happens with Connor Goldson. I'm quite happy he's got a pre-season off. I would put it purely down to injury, because if Steve Clarke is choosing Grant Hanley over John Souttar, then that man has got some serious eye problems and he needs to go to Specsavers. Some serious loyalty issues towards other players there. If John Souttar's not in that Scotland squad, it's absolutely wild. But to be honest with you, I'm not the biggest Scotland fan, so I'm quite happy that from a Rangers perspective, he's getting a break this summer.
I think a lot of people are kind of in the same boat, mate. Sten, we obviously spoke about Hadji, done obviously a full podcast about him on Monday, but
yeah,
just the interesting bit of his quote was, I expect them to work as well as possible to find the right team, the right manager for me. Don't feel that's a quote you're coming out saying if you're going to be staying at the club that you're contracted to. So kind of what do you feel about the statements that he made?
I think he said, though, whether that's at Rangers or not, did he not say something along them lines in the quote?
You can't say if it'll be at Rangers or somewhere else, but I think the wording of the previous sentence kind of doesn't translate to.
To be honest with you, I'm kind of looking more at it as in he's not ruled out staying at Rangers, so I think the manager's basically told him get in pre-season and we'll see what happens. I don't think Clement's the type of manager that would judge Hadji purely off a loan spell. I expect Clement to give everybody a kind of blank canvas in the summer, and he likes Adam Devine coming back for Motherwell and stuff like that as well. I expect everybody to get a clean slate going into pre-season, because this is Clement's job really starting to make any sense. If that makes any sense, he's going to get his own players in. He's not robbing Peter to pay Paul in terms of patching a team up, a starting lineup up every summer. He's going to have his own players, and I think with the athleticism and power that Clement's wanting to bring in, I think Yanis Hadji could be, like we says on Monday night, a potential tin opener for Rangers, because if he can get a guy fit, he's already got value. But if he gets one good season at Rangers or one good block of 6 months, he's my best number 10, let's be honest about it. A 55 season and the numbers showed that he's better than Cantwell, he's better than Lawrence. For me, we really should be getting Hadji in and saying, listen, you're one of my main players. And I think if you put an M on him like that, I think he would want to stay. I think the boy just wants to play football. I think that's why he's kind of at this press conference or whatever it is, he's been in and he's like, I'm an open book. Like, if it's at Rangers or whether it's somewhere else, I'll leave it up to my agents and I'll just focus on Euros just now. It's a kind of standard quote for me. It definitely doesn't signal for me that he's out, if that makes any sense. I've took it as, all right, well, he's not ruled out being at Rangers either. I think he would have come out and said something like that. Because we've seen it in previous press conferences. He's been forthcoming and saying, like just before we went to Alaves at the beginning of last season, he was like, I'm looking to leave. He never at least come out and says that. Whereas he's not just now. So can't wait to wait and see, to be honest with you, Kai.
I think that's fair enough, mate. I think you're maybe the first person I've actually seen take that route with it, but it does make sense. Like you say, he did come out and kind of say he wasn't happy that he wasn't getting played last season. He was hoping to play more minutes, which obviously Beale potentially didn't take well to.
If come on, doesn't he take him in and look at him and then he goes out in a good career, then there's, whereas if Clermont gets him in for pre-season and then sells him, then you can understand that because Clermont's seen him on the eye and he's been able to judge him and make his mind up whether he's a good trainer, etc., whether he's going to fit in. And we all know that Yanis Hadji's a hard worker.
Yeah, you can see I know people were talking about when he went to Alaves, or even when he came back in the summer after his injury, the amount of kind of muscle he put on. So he'd obviously been training really hard to get back fit. You seen how much it meant to him when he came back against Hibs and he scored. He was obviously crying during his celebration. Like he loves the club. Like the fans have treated him well since that night against Braga. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Then just the last one before you come on, we kind of covered Abdallah Sima and Brighton saying that they're going to test the market, but they're going to wait until they've got a new manager in to make any decision on it. So we spoke about what's obviously, do you want him back permanently firstly, and then what's the kind of max that you would pay for him?
Do I want him back? Yes. Do I think he'll be back? No, because of the transfer fee alone is going to take too much out of our budget. I think with the injuries and stuff, it's set doubts in my minds that there's no that kind of fever among the support to get him. I think everybody's kind of sitting on the fence with it. I think that's a general feeling across the board. Brighton are very much treating him like the way Bayern Munich treated Malik Tillman, and they're going to use us as a step. The parent club are using the loan club as a stepping stone to get a bigger fee, and I think that's probably the route we're going to go down. I can maybe see Sima signing a contract extension and then going to another club loan with an obligation to buy, if I'm being brutally honest. I don't think when we had Degan on the Sima pod a few months ago, he says that Brighton haven't turned a profit. Some along the lines of they've always turned a profit in any player they've had. There's only been, I think the last time Brighton didn't turn a profit in a player was a championship or something. So that was an awful long time ago. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think Sima's going to happen. If it does, and if he can stay fit, what a player. But I see him going down the route with Brighton. If they're testing the market, they're going to try and get more money for him. And I think that's sort of Rangers' price range. And I think Rangers should be focusing on the likes of David Watson at Kilmarnock anyway, and getting other areas in the park that's actually going to work. We can't spend $6 million in Ramani and bring Sima into. It's not going to happen. Do you know what I mean?
I'm very jealous of that Brighton model. I mean, imagine we could turn around and say that we've not made a lot in any player since we won the championship. But I'll move on to kind of incomings now. So the first one I'm going to look at is Damian Garcia, who, if you follow us on Twitter or have seen any videos, know I've been kind of raving about for the last couple of months. So he's obviously wanting to move in this window because if you've seen any of the quotes, he's agents pretty raging it. Penarol for kind of what he's getting paid. He said he doesn't make enough money to pay his rent. And the quote was the chairman offered 2 pesos for his extended contract, which obviously is hyperbole, but they're wanting him out now. And he's fortunately not away the kind of Copa America. He's still been mostly playing in another 20 side for Uruguay, but he's one I'm really excited by. Doug, I'll come to you. You seen much of Damian Garcia? Is it a deal you'd be excited for us to get in?
Well, I must say I'm not super familiar with him. I had a look today, so obviously in anticipation of tonight. He looks like he's a clever player, and he can add a little bit of nous into the midfield, which would be good. The recovery stats, a lot of the ball recovery stats that you covered in your video, really impressed me. Some really good numbers within there, which I think will be really useful, particularly in Europe and against Celtic. So I think that's really good, particularly for his age as well. Some of the numbers were really high. Uruguayans tend to be quite sort of tenacious players as well, which I like. I don't know whether he's quite bitey level or not, but I think that little bit of tenaciousness and bite in the midfield is always a plus. So at the risk of stereotyping him a little, that's something else that our midfield could use. So from the little that I've seen, I think he does look like he could be an interesting player. He seems to have a similar to his sort of attribute overview. He's got a lot of similar attributes to Raskin, but he's a bit more creative, and like I see, maybe a little bit more attacking as well. So offers just that little bit different. So yeah, looks like it could be interesting.
What about you, Scotty? When you'd be excited by his getting in?
To be honest with you, Kai, I don't know much about the guy, but for what I've read and what I've heard like you guys saying in the chat and stuff, he seems like a specialist number 6, and that's what we need. As long as he seems more like a deep line playmaker or a roaming playmaker. If you're a Football Manager fan like what us, then everybody will know what we're talking about. But need somebody with a wee bit of dig and with an eye for a pass, and it's going to transition the ball forward. Anybody that's a big upgrade in John Lundstrom for me, I'd be a happy camper. Obviously, I like his age, and I like the fact that as a Leeds fan too, I've never hidden it. He's going to be playing for Marcelo Bielsa eventually as well, so that's not always a bad thing to have under your belt. Bielsa will develop that boy, trust me. So I would definitely, I'd be bringing him in. It's kind of, it fits everything we're looking for, doesn't it?
Like you say, mate, he is that kind of specialist number 6. He's intelligent. He's positionally for his age, especially. Like Doug said, he knows where to be. He keeps it simple when he needs to. He's capable of driving forward, but he's going to be that player that will sit and let Diamandi do the creative stuff. He'll give him the ball, let him do his thing, sit in front of the defence, kind of cover those areas that he needs to cover, pick up all those loose balls that we've previously not been picking up. One of the biggest things is that he's not going to be dropping between the centre halves, which again is a massive bonus for me. And he's an under-20 World Cup winner. Loads of players from that under-20 World Cup are now going for 10, 20, 30 million, like the Brazilians you're looking at that were at that tournament. And there's a chance to get this guy in for a couple of million. He played for the team that won it, obviously because his contract's expiring in December. I think for me, it's a no-brainer for somebody that's kind of looked at him since I was doing the South American videos and players we could sign. He was somebody that stood out to me then. Obviously, looking into the under-20 World Cup is where we've seen like Cortez shine as well. So it seems like we might have actually had scouts there looking at that, or if it's just a case of Coppin's been kind of keeping an eye on that tournament, and then when he's came here, he's just brought a list of players. So just before we move on to the next player, I want to ask kind of your thoughts on that market. We seem to be looking in that South American market where players are expiring, other contracts are expiring at the end of the year instead of, obviously in the summer we've done that with Cifuentes last year. Obviously didn't work out, don't really want to talk about that one, but it's a market we seem to be going into again. I'll come to you first, Doug. Is it a market that excites you? Is it the type of market you think we kind of should be shopping in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an area we've not made the best of in the past. But like you say, the thing that really I think can work in our favour is that contract misalignment, if you like, and the fact that at the times that we are shopping, we could be looking at players whose contracts only have months to go rather than years. And again, if our scouting is good enough, that could lead us to get some really great players at lower values. A lot of players are keen over there to come to Europe. So for maybe ones that aren't quite at that next level yet, we can be a doorway for them to do that. Obviously, we can offer them the potential to play in Europe, which will be attractive to them. And again, ideally, if we're doing well getting players moved on, then we're showing them that they've got a pathway to potentially what they might consider to be bigger and better, we wouldn't say so. But in terms of playing in England or potentially other European leagues, I saw someone asking in the chat about the price for him. I think, am I right in saying he's valued about $1 million and a half or so? I know you looked at it, Kai. So, that's a really good price for a young player coming on. Should, in theory, be really easy to get him in, get him playing well, and make profit on that kind of value. So, yeah, I think it's a really clever market to be looking at.
Same question for you again, Scott. How do you feel about shopping in this market? It's obviously, apart from Cifuentes last year, it's not really one we've looked into. So for me, it's quite exciting. How do you feel about it?
I feel okay about it. Just as long as there's some ready-made players brought in to settle these guys in, because obviously reports in Saudi are getting stronger and they're not going away about Tavin Goldson. Obviously, El Ettifaqui are kind of rumoured to be in, was it 7 million it was quoted for an article the other day. So if you're going to lose Lundstrom, Goldson and Tav, then you need to bring in, I'm sorry to say it, but like say a Paddy McNair that we done a pod on a few weeks ago. You need to bring in players that are going to know the club. You need to be smart with it. You can't go out and shop buying in Kieran Dowells and all this. You need to bring in the cross-border ruling as well. There was that young boy for Arsenal I was quite happy we've been linked with. He looks pretty decent as well. There's all sorts of different players within Britain that we should be going for. David Watson again. I'm moving on for Lawrence Shankland into David Watson now. I think I'm really banging that drum now instead, Kai, because it's something that's needed. I mean, RRFC72 just saying in the comments now, I am not going to be banging the Ollie McBurney drum, never in my puff. But Kenny McLean, I watched a bit of Championship last season, player of the year for Norwich, 32 experience, knows the league. He's got good leadership skills. He's the captain. I think there's a bit of a daft nickname for him down there that he's a mayor in Norwich or something like that. Would that be a bad signing if there's that non-promotion release clause? Would that be bad getting him up the road? I don't think it would be, because you need these guys to come in that know the league, know the demands of the club, to help settle the likes of your Garcias and whoever else from South America we're going to bring in. So as good as it is, I'm also a wee bit cautious about it because I've been stung by the Paul Le Guen era, the Pedro Caixinha era. We've seen all these guys before that have come in, your likes of Alibo Sioncos, Carol Svenssons. Christ, I'm having flashbacks. I'm going to have nightmares tonight about these guys just now. I mean, they all would have looked good on paper, and then when they come in, they just don't settle. Even your Fabio Silva, he didn't really take the league by storm either. Cifuentes, there's always a risk with these guys, so you need to bring in Scottish or English-based players that are going to be able to come in and settle a squad, know what the club's about. You need captain material, basically, for me, Kai.
See, on that point,
John David Watson. There you go, mate.
Just on that point, I just wanted to put to both of you as well. Do you think we should also, as well as looking at signing players like that, should we also be looking at within for players to step up and into those roles? So I'm thinking players like, obviously we've retained Balogun, who's an experienced head and by all accounts apparently great in the thing. But players like John Suter, who is getting to that older point, he's 28 now. He's presumably going to be one of our starting players. Even players like Sterling, who although still young has now been here for a year. Dessers, if he's going to still be around, Dessers is an experienced player. He's older as well. Should we also be looking within to get players to step up and into these roles rather than always necessarily bringing players in?
I think if players are a leader, then they're a leader. No matter what their kind of standing in the squad is. If you come in and you have that type of personality, you're going to see it on the pitch. You're going to see it with the other players. I don't even really see it in John Suter, that kind of leadership quality that stands out. And I think it doesn't, like I said, I don't think it's necessarily you need to be here for a certain length of time for that. I think if you have it, it's something that's kind of always on show. Well, that's my thought anyway. And I don't think any the players that are currently there kind of exude that an awful lot.
For me, it's. I mean, you brought up Elisa Suter. Suter's already part of a failing squad. Like, he was part of the defence that kind of cost his goals at Ross County and whatever else. He's got a bad injury record. I know he's had a good season last year. He's had a much more stable season, but in terms of stepping up, I don't know. It's a hard one for me. If then you kind of look down the park a wee bit, you obviously mentioned Dessers, and the quotes coming for come on, kind of after the Dundee game or whatever game it was, that Dessers is probably the nicest guy in the UK. And that's why I've always banged the Shankland drum, because in that cup semi-final, I'm seeing Shankland pushing Hearts players off the park, telling them what he's expecting of them. You need that real grit and that leadership up front. That's what this squad's missing from me. Dujon Sterling, yes, I would completely 100% agree, because we done the press up at Dundee the night of the 0-0 draw, and that was the night that Sterling was coming in and saying I sat in the next thing when he came in after come on. Very forward, very forthcoming. Wasn't dressing anything up. I liked it. But in terms of leadership, the guy's not even got a stable position in the park yet. So it's really, really hard for me to say, yes, he could step up and be a kind of leader within the group. Balogun, he's been kept purely for his leadership skills. I just think bringing in guys like Kenny McLean would make me feel better, because he knows what the club's about. He's had a good season. He's just played like 46 matches in the Championship, so we know he's fit. Playing a 6 is something that you can do at that age. But again, it all comes down to fee and stuff. I think we need new leadership brought into the team, because the current leadership group and the current personnel within the squad have failed us now this season and in previous years. And I think it needs ripped up and started again, if I'm being brutally honest with you, mate. But there is potential in there for people to step up high.
I'm thinking as well as not just on the pitch leadership, but specifically like what you were saying there about like helping younger players. A lot of that's going to happen off the pitch, where I think someone like in my mind that's more what I meant when I mentioned Dessers, for example. I don't necessarily see Dessers as an on-field kind of leadery, captainy type of player, but I can imagine he's probably a really good guy off the field in terms of making people feel welcome, making them feel less anxious about coming in, joining a new squad like that. Because, like you say, he seems like he's a really friendly guy. Yeah, in a lot of ways, he actually kind of reminds me of Balogun in terms of the way he approaches, and maybe that's a bit of a cultural thing as well between them. But I think that's more kind of what I was getting at, more that all round helping players to settle in that you were sort of touching on, rather than necessarily the leadership on the park aspect.
I think it's. Can I come in, Kai? Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
I think it's more. See, if you look at how Diamonde and how Cortez settled in, Doug, they come in and Cortez took the league by storm within 3-4 matches. Like, it was absolutely brilliant. I'm so happy Cortez is staying. Diamonde came out, scored one with his right, one with his left. Kind of stumbled a wee bit, and then he turned up again in the cup final. That was his best performance in a Rangers jersey for me. So I think the club can do more to settle these guys in, which is something I think Clement's maybe implemented in the background for them. Whether that's, we're actually going to do a pod on it now, whether that, we'll call it like, how can we settle these players in kind of thing. And it can be as much as making sure they've got family over with them, making sure they're happy within the area they're going to be living. Like, it can be just, it's like basic needs of a human being. You're taking them out of their environment and you're putting them in a new one, and you're trying to get them acclimatised to that. So for me, the club can do an awful lot to help settle these players in as well as the players within the squad.
No, I think it's a fair point, man. I think that's going to be a really interesting point when it comes round, because, like we spoke about, the players that are rumoured aren't pretty much not many that are UK based, definitely none that are based in Scotland. So it is going to be an adjustment period for a lot of these players. But we're going to talk about another one that's been linked. So Thomas Goldames, he's obviously said that there's interest from Scotland in an interview, but like talking about leadership qualities. Like he's someone that he comes across as just this hard man that we don't have. Obviously, shared the clip of him. He slips going into a tackle and he still flies into it with his head. He's aggressive, he's athletic. I honestly love the look of him playing left back and centre back. But his club president came out today and said that he's not going to stand in the way of the player leaving. So there was thoughts that they kind of wanted to keep him until his contract ended and let him leave for free. But the club president came out and said that he's not going to stop him leaving, but there's been no concrete offers as of yet, and currently he's away to the Copa America with Chile. So international, plenty of experience in South America, and just a hard man that we're sincerely lacking. So, Doug, what's your thoughts if you have any on Thomas Kodames?
Yeah, I think he's a really interesting looking player. I was thrown a little bit because when I first looked at him, I thought I was reading about a centre back, and then I saw he'd been playing left back pretty much the entire season. But again, that's good for to have players flexible. If he can play that left centre back role, then that's grand. In terms of left back, he looks like he would be a more defensive full back than either Yilmaz or Jefte. So again, that's a completely different option. But I looked at his attribute sort of tree again, and he does seem to have quite similar attributes to Goldson and Sutter. So that does kind of make me think that that left centre back position could be where we make the best out of him. Maybe even giving options for a back three, which is something we've done again in Europe. If he's got that in him. If he was going to be playing left back, I'd want to get more out of him in terms of assists. Maybe a goal or two. Seems to be a little light on that side. But I don't know whether that's to do with how the team plays. I don't really know anything about his team, I have to say. So that could be part of that. But yeah, like you say, he seems like someone who could bring a real bit of bite into the team. So again, it's something we want the team to be a bit more tenacious. So again, another positive looking young player.
Now, just like before I got to you, Scott, just like RFC72 said, they're the last. I'm sure it was the last game he played now before he went away with the Chile squad. Did two brilliant assists, especially the first one. He's got real quality in his left foot. So he obviously was playing centre back in Chile, and then he moved to Godoy Cruz and he started playing him left back. So I think he's got really good experience in both areas and can play well in both positions. But what are your thoughts, Scotty?
Right, so let's have a look at. Now I remember the cup semi-final under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. John Lundstrom was putting absolutely everybody on their backside that day, right? And that was a game I was like, right, this is a John Lundstrom I want to see every week. He was flying into tackles, he was bullying folk, he was up for it. And that's not something that we've seen much in football or in Rangers within the last 10 years, right? I'd probably say I've only seen it in that one performance, and it came for John Lundstrom. These players tend to go into their shell when the odds are against them. And Clermont has been really good at taking them back out their shell when he's first come into the job. But we need players that are going to be able to stand up and see. If you look at Galdames, and you look at some of the atmospheres this guy's played in Argentina. I'm sorry to say, Rangers fans, but Argentinian fans are a lot more wild than us when it comes to making an atmosphere and being hostile and criticising players and all the rest of it. So we're getting a guy that's going to come in. He's not going to be fair to put a tackle in. He's probably going to pick up 2 or 3 red cards and cost you points, but at the same time, he's going to put his body on the line for a club, which is what's been missing in this squad for an awful long time now. And if he's going to come in and he's going to put a mark on Kyogo in the first Old Firm match next season, like similar to what Kevin Thompson done to Robbie Keane, it's as easy as letting them know you're there. And it's something that's not been in Rangers within in a long, long time now. And Galdames, for what I've seen of him and what I've read about him, he's probably the one I'm most excited about, South American wise. I'd be a lot happier if he came in than what Cordoba would have, just because of Galdames' background. He's in the Chile squad now. For me, it's a really, really exciting link, and it reads that he's a powerful player that's not going to put up with nothing, and he's going kind of tell his teammates off and not be this soft arse that we've currently got throughout the squad just now. The only one that's really got that steel about him is probably John Sterling when he plays. So 100% for me, he's a definite goer. He's got everything. He's pacey. He's got the height. Can play left-sided centre-back. Can fill in at left-back if needed. So I think if we could potentially get rid of Ben Davies and bring him in, then that's an automatic. It's a definite go for me, Kai, because I think the squad needs it. We need to change the mentality in the squad to have maybe a siege mentality against this league, because there is teams and clubs and stuff that are against this, and it's something that needs created within. It needs to be an environment within the squad that's made so that we come out and go, right, well, we're going to take this game to you, and we need players that are going to be able to put in hard tackles to do that.
Just I really want to go into next season with a defence that's not going to let Theo Bayer, Simon Murray, like, no offence to them, but strikers of this quality absolutely bully us and run the game, especially Theo Bayer done it at Ibrox. Like, I'm sorry, that's embarrassing. I don't think he'd scored more than 3 goals in a full season until last year. Got him in his purple patch and he's running a defence drag at Ibrox in a defeat that potentially turned our season round. That's something I want to avoid next season. I think having players like Hotham is definitely going to stop that. But the last remark we're going to move on to is one that kind of kicked up a notch yesterday. So Albion Romani reports come out from, I think it was Digisport in Romania. The Rangers are set to bid €6 million for the Kosovo international, and it's apparently double what Slavia Prague had already bid. So they've apparently bid €3 million. It's been turned down. Rangers are going to go in with €6 million, obviously, according to this source. Last season, he scored 17 goals and 25 domestically with a 22% conversion rate, which is 6% higher than Cyril Dessers and 4% higher than Lawrence Shankland, and averaged 125 minutes per goal. So, Doug, love to get your thoughts on Albion Romani.
Yeah, this is a player that quite excites me. I must admit, I'd never heard of him prior to him appearing on our radar, but upon looking into him, I'm really excited by this one. And I'm really excited by him because he seems like he's very similar to Miovski, who's a player that I'm a big fan of as well, but didn't think we would have the opportunity to get in for various reasons. So the fact that he strikes me as so similar, but also potentially better. There's a couple of things I looked at, like you touched on. Obviously, you got a really good goal ratio, and it's almost double that of Miovski's. He's also got almost double the assists that Miovski had as well across the season. He seems like he's better defensively. His defensive stats stack up quite well, and again, using Miovski as a yardstick, a lot of them much better. So he seems to get more involved in the overall game, which will be important to us from our attackers. And again, in terms of looking at European games, when we need our forward to be involved in the game as well as just scoring. So I think that could be a plus. If all that can translate to coming to Scotland, then I think he could be a big hit. So yeah, quite excited by the prospect of him. So I'm one that really hope we get this one through.
It's still the first time I kind of looked at him because I covered him in December. He started the season with 6 goals in 6 games, then picked up an injury, but he came back and obviously was still firing towards the end of the season. The thing, like you said, that struck me the most was the similarities to Miovski. I think he's a bit quicker, a bit better with the ball at his feet, like we've seen what Miovski done against Old Firm last season. So I think there is parts of his game that would translate really well. Like I said, it's one I'm excited about, but how are you feeling about it, Scotty?
I'm still trying to go over Cyril Dessers transfer. We paid 4.5 million for a guy that is going to come in, rip the league now. 22 goals is good, but we all know what he missed. Danilo had really unlucky with injuries. I mean, that was what, 10.5 million spent on it, and then you bring in the other 3 million for Sam Lammers, and you're like, it's a bit kind of, it's just as good as a fart in a spacesuit, if I'm being honest. So I don't get me wrong, I'll support him if he comes in. He looks good, but they all look good. I watched this time last year. I'm watching Cyril Dessers score goals in the Conference League and stuff, and I'm like, that guy looks that guy looks class. He looks something else. And he is good. He is good. But I'm kind of on the fence with not bringing in somebody that can put the ball in the back of the net that's proven at it here, which is why I'm going to revert. Now, see if he's coming in alongside Shankland or Tony Cholak, who I know can score goals in this league. I'm absolutely for it, 100%. But if we're going to rely upon this guy to be your number 9 and to fire us to 56 next season, then I'm going to need to sit in the fence about it, because I've not seen him do it in a Rangers jersey yet. If that makes any sense, Kai. For €6 million, it's a big outlay again. So that's where I'm at with it. It's an exciting link, and I trust what you guys are saying on him. But Kai, do you think he could come in and date in a Rangers jersey?
I think so, mate. Like I said, his game's very similar to Miovski's, and we know how well Miovski's done in this league. It's just he does need to come in and hit a ground running for that type of price. Hopefully, whatever we get for Sam Lammers can hopefully cover this. I'm not saying we're going to get €6 million for Sam Lammers. I think we could, consider the end of the season they had last season.
I think that's what we should be demanding, to be honest.
At least 20 for Lammers, at least 20.
Because Utrecht obviously can't afford that. I mean, they broke records and everything at the end of last season, so I think we're doing ourselves a disservice if we're not looking to make profit there. So if it's a case of Lammers goes out and all the money goes to Romani, then I'm not upset about it. But like you say, I still think it depends on what happens with Dessers if we bring in any other strikers, because there's not actually been many strikers linked. Most of the time it's been kind of wingers and centre halves and fullbacks. Whereas this is the one that's kind of stuck. And obviously at first we were told we were competing with Napoli and Villa as well. So I think when it first came out, we kind of priced ourselves out of it. Like if Villa and Napoli are going for him, then we're not going to get him. But seems, if the reports are true, obviously it's coming from Romanian media, so we don't know how legit it is. But if the reports are true, it seems we're really pushing towards this one. That must be one. Obviously, Clement and Coppin really want. So from what I've seen, I like him, and if they've seen the same thing, they like him as well, then I'm going to trust him. I know it's a big thing to say after last summer, but I'm going to prepare myself to get heartbroken yet again.
Kai, I would rather we bring Romani in than go out and spend it in Miovski. Now, the reason I say that is Miovski isn't the most prolific of strikers in an Aberdeen jersey. Shankland scored a lot more goals than Miovski last season. I know age and stuff can all come into it and whatever else, but Aberdeen are going to want upward of £8 million, and they're quite right to probably demand that for Miovski because they've got a good striker in their hands. But if he was coming in with a proven goal scorer, then you wouldn't hear me complaining about it at all. I just think the striking department needs revamped. Needs completely revamped.
The biggest issue with Miovski for me is we've obviously seen how good he is against the Old Firm, but he doesn't do it that much against the wee teams. Like he goes missing. His conversion rate is really poor. Actually, I'm sure it was something like 13% the last time I checked, because somebody had asked me to do one of the profiles on Miovski, and I was like surprised at how kind of poor the numbers were, because they don't match the eye test. Like you watch him against Rangers and Celtic, and you're like, what a player this boy is. He's obviously not doing it kind of consistently the whole season. So I'd rather, like you said, spend the money on Romani than Miovski, because potentially you could get Shankland and Romani for the Miovski money. And if that's the case, then to me that's an absolute no-brainer. If you can bring the two of them in, you're obviously not going to probably have Dessers there as well and then run with the 4 strikers. But if it's a case of getting Miovski or Romani, then when you stick my neck out in the line and say Romani. But I think we'll wrap it up there, lads. We're coming up to the hour, so I just want to say thanks to everyone for watching, and just can I say your goodbyes, Doug?
Yeah, thanks everyone for watching. I think we've got some really exciting links and some really exciting players, so which is really good to see. The only thing, my closing note, I think would be, so the only thing that's missing for me is a lack of Scottish players, which we desperately need for the European setup next year. So in the coming weeks, that's what I'm hoping to see, some links with some more Scottish players.
Scotty, thanks for coming on, mate.
No problem at all, mate. No problem at all. Hey, I'm trying to think what we've got coming up next week. I've not got my planner down in front of me, but There'll be content Monday to Friday again next week. I think me and Doug's going to sit down and cook up something, aren't we, Doug? I think we're going to
we're going to
take
talk
it to the
about
next level.
Talk about how to improve Scottish football at some point, I think.
That's Tuesday, I think that's next Tuesday. Me, you and Mitch, that'll be a laugh. Definitely. So there's plenty of content coming up Monday to Friday. Some pre-recorded, some no. It's just your luck whether it's pre-recorded or not. It's just we've not really got a manpower to have live feeds every night. So thanks for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, tell your mum, your grands, tell everybody about the Rangers.
Obviously, like Scotty said, we'll have obviously all free content Monday to Friday. So like, subscribe, it really helps the algorithm, helps get us out there. The more we bring in, the more we can kind of give out pretty much is what it boils down to. While we've been on here, I've had a message, so we'll have someone on at some point next week to talk about Albion Romani. Hopefully we're going to get more confirmation in the validity of the deal then, but I've got somebody that will come on and talk about him. So along with all the other content, that's something else to look forward to. So closing words from me, as always, just remember that every night is a Rangers final night. Have a good one.